new that have never been done before.
We the people tell the government what to do. It doesn't tell us. We the people are the driver. The government is the car. And we decide where it should go and by what route to do. We the people are free. And I hope we have once again reminded people that man is not free unless government is limited.
G'day, beautiful people. How are you? Are you noticing something different? Do I look a little bit better? I say this because I don't expect to immediately become attractive or anything like that, but a very dear friend was having a chat with me yesterday and said he hadn't seen my show in a while, but he did watch, I think, one of the ones from earlier this week, and he said, do you mind if I say something? And I said, no, feel free. He said, your lighting's buggered. I said, I never really think much about lighting. So he said, go and get a ring light. Turns out I've had a ring light for quite some time, so I just had to dig it out. And what I have had above me is some very light, very bright LEDs, which sort of rain down on me, but it does tend to make me all whited out a bit, I guess. So hopefully this has me with a little bit more colour. That'll keep him happy at least. These television types. That's what happens if I turn the lights on full. But if I drop them down a bit or even lower, there you go. So who knew? I'm playing with lights and I've got friends in television who tell me how to fix things. I am blessed with the people I have around me, including young Spazza, who was in house early. First up, good on you, brother. Hope you're doing all right. Tony, I hope you have recovered from your big drive out west the other day. And it was great to be part of that. I just want to reiterate, Tony spent a minimum of 7 to 8 hours on the road to go and help cover what was happening at the farm gate of Ben Duxon's place the other day. Now, while at the time we realised there were a lot of people there, considering where it was in the middle of nowhere, but we weren't quite sure exactly how many. Turns out Tony's estimate was more on the money than anybody else. If you listen to the ABC, there were 150 people there. There were clearly a lot. There were 150 cars there. So, there's clearly a lot more people than that. When these country folk come out, they don't come out by themselves. They might be a ute they're travelling in, but it'll be husband and wife or, a worker off the farm or somebody else coming to help. So I think Tony's estimate of between 500 and 600 was probably closer to the money than the ABC's. However, there's been a lot of media pick up on the fact that that congregation of farmers, that action to stop VNI West coming on or TCR coming on and doing their surveys has gone global. It's really catching a lot of people's attention. And as I said in my broadcast that night, the sense of community and unity that you could just feel coming through your screen by those people being there and standing united, determined not to let these people on. And there was never going to be a fight. They were never going to push on that day. However, the time will come where these people will exercise the powers the government gave them to force themselves onto the property. And I think that will be a day where those people who are going to try and force themselves onto the property, their costs will have already been blown out because now they're turning up with security guards at every one of these things. Well, what do you think? How many security guards do you think they're going to need on the day they force themselves onto a property? It's going to be an expensive trip. And do you think that's going to help keep your power line or your power costs down once the power lines go up, these transmission lines go up? And for the ignorant people in the city who believe that this is just slow-talking rural people against progress, well, I beg to differ. Victoria provides 3% of our nation's food, and they do that from less than 3% of Victoria. That's a significant food production bowl for Australia Not to mention what gets exported and goes overseas. There's, I'm pretty sure, a pretty good lobster trade that goes out of the southwest coast of Victoria and probably all the way around through Gippsland as well. There's many other fishing or fisheries that are being exploited and used, including abalone, which used to be inside the bay in Melbourne from memory. So let's just move on. I want to talk about government because I've spent my day driving today. Had to go and help my mum early this morning. She's nearly 90, and she's had a tree taken out of her front yard, and the bastards didn't take the roots out. So guess who got the job of taking the roots out and filling in the hole? Anyway, good bit of exercise, and it was good to catch up with her. She's turning 90 on the 10th of December, so we're going to have, she's a big lobster fan, so we're off to have a lobster lunch with her, I think on the 13th. It'll be a bit of a shared birthday, I think, between both of us. So we'll check that one out on the 13th. It was good to catch up with Ma, who doesn't really understand, or I think at her age care much anymore about what's going on in the world. So as long as she gets to play golf, gets to go to church, and the lawns get mowed, I think she's a pretty happy lady. And God knows, wouldn't we all be if that's all we had to worry about? So while I was running around on the road, I spent probably more time on the road today than I thought I was going to, because I wound up going to two places I hadn't expected. But that gave me a lot of time to listen to the goings on inside the Senate today and Senate estimates. And I've got to say, like yesterday, I'm just disgusted. And I can't say that I'm just disgusted with the Labour Party, because I have a sneaking suspicion that when the Liberals were in power, they probably played similar games as to the ones the teenagers representing the Liberal Party, the Labour Party, are in government at the moment. I thought today, for the first time ever, that thing, Katie Gallagher, Minister for Finance, is she? She showed less arrogance and maybe, I don't know that I'd call it humility, I'd just say less arrogance. She was noticeably less aggressive in her answers to questions surrounding a number of areas in the finance department that seem to have significant issues with transparency. $2.3 billion of unauthorised payments coming out of the government offices seems to be being brushed off as not really significant. These were payments that were due to go to the states for various different things. The fact that the system didn't catch these payments is what is the, I suppose, the overriding problem that many are seeing in the system at the moment. And the Labor Party argues that the system did catch it. Unfortunately, the system didn't tell anybody in the Labor Party. They had to read about it in the Australian Financial Review, which made them all sit up and take notice a bit, I'm sure. Then there have been constitutional breaches. Large, significant constitutional breaches that have been recognised by both the people committing those breaches and the Senate estimates committees who have unearthed them, that they've been complicit in actions that are illegal, that are against our Constitution. Will anybody be made accountable? No. No, no, no. And if you think that somebody will be made accountable, all you need to do is look at the committee or the group in charge of new home building for the government in this country. $10 billion they started out with. And what do they do with it? They don't build homes, they buy homes. Now, it turns out that Labor have done a deal with big superannuation companies to buy these homes on their behalf and then put people into them, so to speak. And then, of course, they're running the 5% debt trap for first home buyers. which, I'll be 60 in a couple of weeks. I'm never bought a home. I would be eligible if I had 5%, but then I'd have to keep paying it and keep paying it. I don't think they're going to give a bloke who's 60 years old what I think would have to be a 40 or 50-year mortgage. But they might, because no mortgage, depending really, unless you're very, very young, and by that I mean probably very early 20s, no bank, no government in this country at any rate wants you to be able to pay off your house. They want you in that debt trap because they can control you. They can coerce you. Because if you've got to make that repayment every month, you're going to have to keep your job. And if you want to keep your job, you're going to have to do what they say. If your job says we need a digital ID before you can come back to work, you're going to go, well, maybe not you, because your work told you needed to go and get a jab and you probably didn't. And you told your work exactly what they could do with their jab. I think we will do the same thing, but I think the normies will just blithely wander off and do it all again. The sad thing I thought today about, and I haven't even touched the surface on some of the things that have been exposed in Senate estimates. And some of these things have taken 2, 3, 4 sittings of estimates, not just this year, dating back 2.5 years, where some of these subjects and questions were raised and the government still hasn't provided answers and now refuses to. When it comes to the housing mob, the Housing Commission group, I don't know what they're called. Well, the Senate has put forward orders to produce documents, OPDs. These are very serious requests from the Senate that give little to no wriggle room for the bureaucrat that they've been presented to. That bureaucrat is meant to provide all the paperwork that is prescribed in this order to produce documents. So they must produce all the documents that are named. Well, as it turns out, there's been a major report done into this whole government housing $10 billion bullshit. And the government has had that in their hands now for quite some time. The Senate, in estimates some time ago, put in a request to have that put forward and tabled in Senate estimates, so the Senate could look at it, so senators could review it. Well, now that Housing Department has put forward a denial. They've said there is a public interest denial request in on those documents. That means the government says it's not in the public interest for the people to know what's in those documents. I think it's more likely not in the government's interest that the people know what is in those documents. And that has been not just in one portfolio in the last couple of days, that has been in many. The way that they don't know, they have to take questions on notice. And I understand you can't know everything all the time. And some of these senators might be asking, questions from left field. But what I've noticed this time around is there are a whole heap of new faces, particularly in the Housing Department. And that makes questions and estimates so much harder, because the people you ask the questions of in previous estimates, whether it's the one before, two before, or 10 before, don't work there anymore. In fact, the turnover in this Housing Department, the government debacle that it is, the $10 billion bullshit debacle, have turned over 25% of their staff since they started. Oh, no, I beg your pardon, 25% this financial year. We're only halfway through the financial year. Must be a wonderful area to work in, don't you think? There is a new secretary, only been in the job about a month. This bloke seems to have his head on. The lady that had the job before him, nowhere to be seen, hasn't supplied any of the answers to the questions on notice she said she would provide. But this new secretary, who's been in the job role, I think, for less than a month, maybe a little over a month, was asked today by Senator Bragg, does he think he'll be around for the next estimates meeting? Because it would be nice to be able to speak to somebody consistently from the top of the food chain. Because this bloke, as it turned out, hadn't been briefed on so many of the issues the senators wanted to get some information about today in the estimates meeting. Is that done on purpose, do you think? They pull out these department heads and deputy heads and swap in new ones who haven't been briefed, and they can honestly say, I haven't been briefed, I've got no idea what you're talking about. We'll have to take that on notice. And the senator has absolutely no way to put pressure on them and get the answers that they want because, well, they're telling the truth. It's a new head. They're not across it. They can't tell you what they don't know, and more particularly, they can't tell you how to find it. And this is how the Labor government likes to move itself forward during its campaigns. Have you ever wondered how briefings and ministerial notes and all that sort of shit get changed and get passed around? And when decisions are made based on advice, and then when you go back and those decisions clearly blow up and are the wrong decisions, we've got a lot of that happening in forward estimates at the moment. A lot of questions about what the projections were and what the real numbers are. And there are significant discrepancies in all of that. But how do you go back when the advice has been given to the minister and when you go and review the paperwork doesn't really make sense. It looks like it's got bits missing. Well, between Pocock and James Patterson in the Senate Estimates Committee, I think we found out how they do it.
This came up in the Fody review of people who would send up a brief to a minister but have a yellow sticky with what they genuinely thought to give the written advice to a minister. Now, in the record, the yellow sticky disappears and you get the brief. That's a lousy way to run advice to ministers. They've just been selective in what they've written down in that advice.
Senator Pocock just told you when you said that public servants were writing things on sticky notes and then losing those sticky notes, that's illegal, and you said to him, no, it wasn't.
I don't think the sticky notes themselves are illegal.
But failing to keep records is.
Yeah, but no, that's what I take that, Senator. I understand that.
I'd be very concerned if the public servants watching this thinking the head of the APSC is sanctifying writing what you really want to say on a sticky note and losing that sticky note rather than putting in a proper briefing.
It's not a practice I've done or I accept or I think is right. But I'm just observing that public servants, in my experience, I do know public servants who've done that in the past.
That is the head of the Australian Public Service. Oh, I never did it. But I know people who have. So how's that? The advisors will write the briefing, and they will write that in political speak, giving enough wiggle room so that the post-it note where they give the real advice to the minister, who can read it and say, all right, righto, okay, great, there are my talking points, yada, 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 yada. And then as soon as they're done with the post-it note, it disappears, everything gets filed away, and in 12 months' time, when those predictions don't come true, and we want to know, it might even be 2 years or 10 years down the track, and we want to know who said what, where, and why, at what time, all we get is the pre-prepared briefing without the secret squirrel little note that filled in all the holes for the minister. Now, that is the head of the Australian Public Service who has admitted he knows public servants that do this. Is it not incumbent upon him to sack them, to censure them, to punish them in some way, and to put forward, demonstrate that there are consequences for doing shit like that? But I doubt there will be. Because now the Parliament has risen. Estimates are done. They might be around for bits and pieces for another week or two cleaning up. I doubt the politicians will be, but there'll be a few staffers wandering around. And we will now have to wait until Parliament ordains to sit again. And I've got to be honest, I don't have the first sitting dates for 2026 close to hand, but I suggest I'd be amazed if it's before March. So we will need to wait until March before some questions can be asked again about what's happened to those public servants who would write a briefing note or a briefing for a minister and then provide the truth on a disposable piece of post-it note, giving the senator or the minister plausible deniability. It is scandalous that this is allowed to go on and that there aren't consequences immediately. There are channels within the parliament to take hold of the bureaucrats and pressure them, I think, significant ways. You can charge them for not doing their job. Is anybody doing that? Of course not, because there's so much of a you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours culture going on in Canberra that the public servants really don't care who is in power because they're not in power. The public servants are. And this clearly demonstrates how they manipulate the minister. Yes, Minister, and yes, Prime Minister, the BBC TV shows from the 70s and 80s, I urge you, if you've never seen them, and there are some people probably young enough watching this show have never even heard of them, but I urge you, not only will you laugh your ass off, but you will cry because the bullshit of the bureaucracy is laid bare. And in Australia, that's where we are today. That bloke that I just played to you is our current day Humphrey. Don't you reckon?
This came up in the Thodey review of people who would send up a brief to a minister but have a yellow sticky with what they genuinely thought to give the written advice to a minister. Now, in the record, the yellow sticky disappears and you get the brief. That's a lousy way to run advice.
Yeah, it's lousy. I recognise it's awful, but I know public servants that do it. Sack them! Charge them! But at the very least, have them removed immediately. And whoever you replace them with, do a briefing for them, preferably not on a post-it note. If you need a hand stapling it to their foreheads, I'm sure we'll be able to find a number of volunteers. Make the bureaucrats accountable. Now, at the moment, there aren't too many people in that place, I believe, who are trying to make the bureaucrats accountable, but I do believe that Patterson, Bragg, Roberts, Pocock to an extent, and others, not many. There is a female in the Liberal Party out of Victoria, Hume. She's starting to cotton on and weave the trap, so to speak. It's not a trap. This stuff has to be played out in a certain way. Evidence has to be exposed, and then once it is exposed, particularly in these Senate estimates committees, then it can be acted on. The problem we have is that it doesn't appear ever to be acted on. There needs to be an independent force inside that parliament that oversees bureaucratic governance. Keep the bastards in their place. There also needs to be term limits put on these bastards. Although, if you're in the housing department, it doesn't appear that any term limit's going to save you. They don't want too many people sticking around there knowing everything for too long because, well, you might get called in front of a Senate estimates committee and have to tell the truth and not be smart enough to tell it in a way that nobody understands what the hell you're talking about. My God, there are a lot of them that appear like that. Very slick public servants. You can tell the ones that are new. You can tell the new shiny bums because they're as nervous as sitting down answering questions. And the shuddering, the wavering of the voice and all that. Now, whether they're nervous because they're sitting in front of television cameras or because it's the Senate Estimates Committee and they're working in the department or being asked, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, put the cameras to one side. It doesn't matter. They're not there to film you. They're just there to monitor, and you just need to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Not little parts of the truth, not just a little bit that, you might have just touched on something in a question. Well, I'll answer just that little bit, but I'm not going to tell you the whole story. These bureaucrats should be the ones keeping the politicians accountable. They should be the ones saying, no, Minister, you can't bring back the ISIS brides. They shouldn't be the ones made to facilitate the bad decisions made by Tony Burke, Albo Sleazy, Penny Wong, and the rest of the brain-dead morons calling themselves the Australian Labour Criminal Syndicate. Now, I can sit here and rave about this till the cows come home, but it's not going to make any difference. You guys like it when I yell and rant and rave a bit, and that's great. I'm glad you like that. Why aren't you yelling and ranting and raving a bit? Why aren't we all in Canberra yelling, ranting and raving a bit? Well, there's no point at the moment. It's too freaking hot and there's nobody there. But when people are there, when the opportunity does present itself, I know it's hard to get there some days. It's in the middle of nowhere. They made it very difficult for everybody to get to, except for people who get access to the public purse and government aircraft. And that has been another interesting little exposure in the Senate in the last couple of days too. Annika Wells, the communications minister, well, she has been off on junkets all over the place, but the biggest one to date appears to be 3 days in New York that cost we, the Australian taxpayer, over $100,000. Why? Well, the minister doesn't travel in economy class, and neither, it appears, does her two advisors who had to go with her. The total cost for their airfares to New York for 3 people was $93,000. Now, I don't know what they flew. I suspect private, because not even an Emirates first-class seat return would cost that much. Which makes me wonder whether or not the companies that are booking government travel are rorting it. Any company that has a contract with government loads their contract. They've done so in the process of getting the contract because it's government. I actually had some experience. I had to put in for a couple of government jobs and I wasn't getting any of them. I couldn't figure out why. That's because I was actually pricing the job fairly for me, and it was too cheap for them. I got told I was missing out on the job because I was quoting $2,000. I should have been quoting $22,000. And then I might have got the job. Why is that? Well, there's a perception that, the extra money comes extra value. But I don't perceive that. My voice doesn't change because you pay me more money to read your ad or do your presentation or whatever. But I know there was a reason that I should have been charging $22,000 instead of $2,000. It's so that I could pay back a little to those who helped me get the job and get me in the door to government contracts, because from one leads to more. Now, this is what it was like in 1995 in Canberra, because that's when I was in there working at, FM 104 and 2CA in those days. And I was being asked because of the voice. I was the new voice in town and yada, yada, yada. I was getting a lot of work. And couldn't believe it that I wasn't getting the big work, though, because I was too cheap. And I would have had to pay a bit of it out, which I guess at the time, if I'd have known, I'd have probably been pretty happy. I probably could have walked out with 10 grand a job out of it. Would have been great. But I would have been ripping off the people. Well, admittedly, in 1995, I don't know that I would have cared that much. But now I care greatly. And should the same offer be made to me today, I wouldn't take the job. I would say, here is what the job is worth to me, and pay it or don't. Now, admittedly, I know the Liberal Party have got a little more in control of their finances in that regard. I've got a friend who does pretty much all the Liberal Party commercials around Australia, whether they be state or federal. And, there's a contract in place there. But I don't know that I know for sure there's no kickbacks, and it's not huge money. So it's good money. Doing political ads is always good money because you've got to put your name to it. Written, spoken, and authorised by Carl Liebold, or written, spoken by somebody, written and authorised by somebody, and spoken by C. Liebold, for whatever party of the third part it is. Speaking of other parties, One Nation are working it, I guess. I want to commend them. I think they are putting a lot of pressure on. I think they are attracting a lot of attention to themselves in a good way. I think they're going to get a huge boost on January 26th when the new movie comes out. If you haven't seen the trailer for it yet, I can't recommend it enough. And I dread to think where they're going to go, because in the trailer, I'm led to believe they haven't put a lot of the really deep, hard-hitting stuff. They've barely scratched the surface. So the gloves have come off, I believe, in the movie, which will be released on the 26th of January. And in fact, I got an invitation in the email yesterday. Now, I don't think it came from anybody in particular. I think I'm just in the database, inviting me with a special ticket, if I would like to purchase a special ticket to the grand premiere on the 26th at a venue to be announced in Brisbane City. And I thought, well, I could be involved in that. I think it'd be good to go along and see the movie firsthand, take a camera. We can all go along and enjoy it, can't we? And then I found out that if you want a ticket to that, and just the ticket is $100. However, if you want a special ticket, which is just the ticket, but it's a collectible ticket, you can pay $100 and near enough to $50, $149.99 or $95 or whatever it is. So it's $100 to go and see the movie. I mean, I guess it's not going to have wide cinematic release. There will be some costs to have put all this together. The people who wrote it, the people who do the cartooning, the people who do the voices, and I think there's only a couple really who do the voices. There's a few like Chris Kenny who makes an appearance with his voice, and a few other media types who do. I don't know that they would have got paid, or if they did get paid, how much they would get paid out of such a thing. But I think most of them would have done it just to be part of it, to be honest. Journalists don't like having to take money and put their names to things. Well, not good ones anyway. There are plenty of ones who'll take the money and put their name to shit, but, I'm not prepared to name names just yet, but the day will come, I have no doubt. So $100 if you want to go and see Pauline's movie, and I just don't have that at the moment to go and donate to Pauline. Or $150 if you want to have a special ticket, which will, just get bent in your pocket on the way home anyway. Fail to see it. But that is going to build a lot more support. Now, it's also going to build a war chest at that sort of level. And you can be guaranteed that once they've done their cinema release, which at this stage of the game appears to be a one-night only thing. So they may have a release in Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth, Darwin, Cairns, Rocky, Newcastle, Geelong, who knows, all on the same day. And then I believe you will be able to go to a website and pay whatever fee they ordain. Now, I think if you're buying a YouTube movie at the moment, it's about $4.99. I think if you're buying a movie on any of the other streaming services, you're probably paying between $5 and $10 to download a movie and watch that, something that's reasonably recent, or something that's just been released straight to friggin' YouTube. It's a bit like they're not making movies for YouTube, or not making movies for cinema anymore. Who knew COVID would kill cinema? But there you go. Don't think it was quite COVID. There seems to be a few stars missing. Oh, speaking of stars, one of them arrived in Australia today. Matt Damon, in his Bombardier Global 7500, magnificent jet, pulled in this morning into Cairns at about 20 to 6, went through customs, filled up with a bit of fuel, and is now luxuriating on Hamilton Island. So Matt Damon's in town and will be around. If you happen to be going up to Hamilton Island, you might bump into him and then head to Byron, because he'll be catching up with a few mates down there, I suggest. I did bring Matt Damon up for a reason, and I've forgotten that now. Isn't that a bastard? Shit. Bugger. Anyway, go on. Go back to Pauline. What will it look like? Well, there was a survey released the other day from 6 News. Bear in mind, 6 News was started by an 11-year-old boy 15 years ago and has developed into something of a very reasonable and very honest media group, if you like. I don't know if it's so much a group, but the bloke that runs it is pretty good at what he does. So here's a little bit of a breakdown of how things are going at the moment. Now, One Nation clearly have picked up 12 seats here by projection. That's pretty bloody exciting, but it still doesn't give them any great huge advantage. If we're going to give One Nation a go come the next election for those people that vote, why? What have they done that's made you change your vote, if in fact you have changed it from one colour to another? What would it take for you to change your vote from one Conservative Party, or maybe even the not-so-conservative ones, to vote for someone like Pauline Hanson and One Nation? These are all questions that I'm very interested in getting your answers to. And in the chat, I just can't see them all. So that is why shortly, well, we might try it out before Christmas, but certainly in the new year, we're going to start a service where I might pose a few questions like that, or one in particular, and we'll give you a phone number to ring so that you can leave your thoughts. And if you are a member, you will go into a prize draw for our best caller. Now, that phone call will be just an answering machine, so the question will be, on there, and when you hear the beep, say who you are, where you're from, and give us your thoughts, because you are the people who can change this. And when we hear from all of you, or as many of you as possible, those who aren't brave enough to pick up the phone and make a comment will be empowered. They will know they are not alone. It's not just them and me. It won't be just my voice they'll be hearing say this. It'll be yours too, hopefully. And together, we can grow that next year. We can grow that right across the country. Because communication is key. Your feelings, your intentions, your desires, your questions are the most important, I believe, the most important things facing us in the next 2.5 years, leading up to the next election. Now, if we can wake up enough people, and should there be a decision to follow Pauline and co., and I'm not convinced they can maintain this momentum for 2.5 years just between you, me, and the gatepost. I think that they're going to struggle. Why? You can only wear the burqa so many times. And while she did bring it out now, it's maybe just one trick pony. I don't know. Roberts, I would look forward to him doing a few more things. And there is a new One Nation senator who's in there. I've forgotten his name. But he does seem to be communicating pretty well too. I do like the way that certainly Roberts has gone on the attack. He and James Patterson seem to be, and so Senator Bragg seems to be coming out now as being some of the major attack dogs for the coalition or the opposition or whatever you want to call them. Let's just hope that they don't get fat and stupid over Christmas and forget what it is they were doing this past week in Senate estimates. I don't think they will. I just wonder whether or not the same people will be there to answer the questions of them next time round, because the government is very good at changing those sorts of things. Rotten bastards that they are. I hope you are all very, very well and that life is going well. I'm just having a bit of a scan through to see if there's any questions or things like that. My hair is growing, yes. Have you noticed there is a bit of a change in the beard? There's a reason for that. It's substantially shorter than it has been. And that's because yesterday, like a complete tool, I set my face on fire. Or just the beard. There. Oh, this side particularly. Got a big missing bit there. Don't ask me how. Just happened. And I didn't think it was that bad until I walked inside and stood in front of a mirror. And yeah, I'm pretty lucky actually. I didn't burn off half the whole thing. So yes, the hair is getting a little bit longer. I do have the clippers ready. I won't be paying whatever I paid last time for another bloody haircut. Bugger that. We might even make that a live so you can see how I butcher my own hair. It would be a nice thing. You did not notice my ring. I wasn't bending over. I don't wear a ring. I have been playing around with knots recently. In fact, I've made balls. Don't ask me why. The older I get, I seem to be turning into my biological father, who, towards the end of his life, had a fascination with knives and paracord. I don't know. It's strange. Anyway, living the life. What can I say? And no, if you're asking, they are the worst monkey fist knots you've ever seen in your life. So anyway, yeah. Oh, what's scaring you? Oh, J1, nothing scares you, dude. Scotty's in the house. Haven't seen you in for a while, mate. Scotty the News, good to have you in. Carl's handicap is his height. Yes, I don't have enough of it. You might be. You might be. I take a lot of solace in the fact that I really do believe we are watching a movie. It's not to say that the casualties aren't real and that we could all play that role at some point in the movie. But there is too much going on. And I had hoped tonight we might be able to throw a little bit more light on it with Juan O Savins. For the last... So for the last 3 days, we've been trying to get together. Beckio from Truth Seekers and I have been trying to get together with Juan for a chat. He's been promising one to us now for some weeks, and it just keeps getting delayed and put off and delayed and put off. And so for the last 3 days, we've had different times of the day, 7 different times or whatever, and we were meant to be catching up again at 4 o'clock this afternoon, or 4:30 this afternoon in Queensland time. So I would have had something to play with you tonight. Then we suggested that if he couldn't make that, he might just drop in live and have a bit of a chat with us. We know where he is, the time zones and associated other bits and pieces, and clearly his meetings are running long, or the message isn't needed in Australia at the moment. And that's sort of where I'm starting to feel. We're not really important in the scheme of things, particularly, I guess, with what he's working on. And one would suggest that that's not completely, beyond the realms of possibility. He's putting together some pretty big deals in some pretty big countries that are a lot more corrupt, I believe, than Australia is, and that's saying something. So I'm speaking of South Africa and other countries in South America. I also think there's probably something going on with Venezuela, and one would have some interesting information for us on that. With a bit of luck, he will ordain to speak to us sometime before the end of this week. or possibly over the weekend. Who knows? If not, Becky and I might just get together and have a chat. In fact, a great suggestion was made by her the other day for the new FBN channel for next year that I'm planning, which will mean that you will have something to listen to in the mornings every morning, something to participate with and be a part of, and hopefully win a few prizes from. That'd be bloody great. And Becky came up with this bloody great idea. The Carl and Becky O Show. How do you reckon that'd go? I reckon we could almost do a pink background and sparkly bits. And, you know, I get the goatee. I'll get some of those Leary glasses. I'll spray paint my microphone gold. The Carl and Becky O Show. Never know. It might be on your channel next year. I'm just having a bit of a read here. Nice to see so many of you. Such a great family in the chat. And I see you're all answering different pieces. Sandy is having a bit of a time of it at the moment down on the Donkey Sanctuary. Of course, 4 days now until the big day where the farriers come and the vet and the dentist. Oh, the donkeys are really looking forward to it. And I'm not sure that that Baz and Sandy are, because it takes a huge amount out of the Donkey Sanctuary's bank account. About $12,000 just for hooves and teeth. It's pretty staggering. And then there's vets and sedation and all sorts of things, because there's a number of donkeys who have to be sedated before you can do their feet or their teeth. So if you can help, please, if you want to make a donation direct to the Good Samaritan Donkey Sanctuary, you can do that. Find them online. You can buy a $2 ticket in our lottery, and we will endeavour to give Sandy as much money as possible as soon as we sell 750 tickets. Now, I'm not quite sure how much she went up out of the last one, but she picked up probably close to or more than $900 out of our last raffle or our last lottery. That was in great part because I think Tony donated his winnings to her. And after we paid the things that we have to pay to keep us on the air, we donated the rest of that. So with a bit of luck, there'll be a bale of hay to have for lunch and dinner one day. It's probably a bit more than that. But, you know, if you can help, we would love to be able to churn that lottery over. Well, the last one took forever. I think it was 6 or 7 weeks. So I understand it's a drain. It's, you know, you're always being asked for money one way or the other, and sometimes it's just not possible. But if you do have a spare $2 or $20 or maybe $40, because that would be the most amount you could buy, then we would really love you to be part of the lottery, and you will win $750 or a Byron Bob pack, a 1 ounce of Byron Bobs in our Voice of Freedom presentation pack. I'm just about to send out the last of those that I've got on order here too. So everybody should get those before Christmas, or they will get them before Christmas. That's my undertaking. Silver will be at 120 Oz before Parliament sits again. I reckon you're probably right, Wapler. It has dropped a little this evening. So for those of you not following too closely, silver has broken new records again. It nearly broke $90 overnight. I think when I got to it this morning, it was $89.59 or something like that. When the Australian New Zealand markets opened, it dropped a little bit and then rose a little bit, then dropped a little bit, and now it's still in that dropping a little bit mode. We're down at 86.4 at the moment. $86.40 is the spot price. Gold has also gone down about $100. It's at 63.37. The gold silver index is looking even more encouraging, 73.34. Remember, the lower that number, the better, because that means, well, at the moment, it's 73 ounces of silver to get 1 ounce of gold. We want to bring that ratio down under 50. It'd be pretty good, wouldn't it? Well, parity would be even better. But, wow, you can't have everything, and you certainly can't have everything now. Fingers crossed, if you haven't already bought, you are going to, because, as Watler said, I suspect the price will be over $100 before Parliament sits again. I think that's a fair bet. It'll be very close to it. I actually believe there is a significant chance silver will hit $100 an ounce before Christmas. And I have that because I've received that information from a number of different people, including some of the people from Ainsley, but they gave me that information some time ago. So don't think you've missed the boat. You can always get, in fact, I was only talking to a good mate the other day. He said, I think I've missed the boat a bit. I said, no, you haven't. I can't really afford to go and buy much. Just buy some, is what I said. And he's gone off and done that. And he did that online. He was a bit dodgy. I haven't got an Ainsley where I live. And I said, that's all right. They'll just send it to you. And if it doesn't get to you, it gets lost in the mail, don't worry, it's all insured. They'll send you another one. So that's what he did. He's called them up, had a great conversation with the lovely Katrina in the Brisbane office, and now set himself up with a bit of silver, which is wending its way to him as we speak. So you can do that at ainsleyBullion.com.au. The price you pay for your silver at the time is what you will pay. If it goes up overnight, you're not going to pay that higher price. You'll get it for the price you clicked on right now, which would be $86.40. And you can get it online, as I say. They'll send it to you tomorrow. You'll have it in a couple of days in your hot little hand. It is that easy. ainsleyBullion.com.au. Don't ever think that gold and silver are out of your reach. I did. I'm really kicking myself that for whatever reason I never understood or never comprehended the benefit of stacking a bit of silver could be to me. If I had have started that in my 20s and been like some other people I know now, one bloke I know who's essentially the same age as me, started stacking at 19, has over 600 kilos of silver. I said, why don't you convert it to gold? It's a bit easier to carry around. He needs a forklift the way he's going. He's happy. And I would be too, considering vast majorities of that silver was bought at under $32 an ounce. So right now, he is a very happy chappy. And when he drives on the road, folks, he doesn't have to worry about the dickheads. Why? Because he drives a Ram 3500 and will drive straight over the top of the bastard.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's